Let us put our round of applause and welcome Mr. Tai Lee Siang.
Good morning, KLAF 2017. Well, you know, I watch a lot of one of your very famous person in Malaysia, Harif Iskandar. So for Singaporean to watch Harif Iskandar is quite something. So I know the Malaysian audience are very, very passionate, and you really show your emotions when you laugh. And I'm sure that you are here too, carrying the most excitement and passion here. Now, I tell you, this is such a lovely audience, and it seldom speak to so many people. And I'd like to do something, with your permission. Can I take a photograph of you so that I can show my children and family? All right? Now, what shall we say when I count to 3? Malaysia boleh? Okay, get ready? All right. I hope I can send it to Pam, and then you can post it. Whoa. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Malaysia boleh? Oh, let's do it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Malaysia boleh? Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this. I have a little bit of relationship with Malaysia because I found out that I actually was born in Malaysia some time ago. For more detailed story, come and talk to me after this. All right, today, first of all, let me thank Pam for inviting me here. And it's such a privilege to speak to you, especially when I'm also trained as an architect and have been practicing mostly in Singapore for a long time. Now, this event has grown over the years since I first attended, and I found it such great success. And I congratulate Pam for growing it consistently with a lot of perseverance. I think that is great. Now, before my talk, I'd like to just give you a brief on my journey into this green building movement. I was elected as the president of Singapore Institute of Architects in 2007 and 2009. And thereafter, with a kind of a chance encounter with, the Green Building Council family, I was then introduced to the family of World Green Building Council. To cut the long story short, from 2011 to 2016, I got elected as the chair for World Green Building Council. And since then, this is already halfway mark of my term. So it is my firm belief that architects can impact the world, and especially play a significant role in the green building movement. Now, I have entitled this talk, Architects and Sustainability. I think this morning, we said something that, this is actually something that shouldn't even be talked about because it's so a part of us. But yet, we have to address it because things have changed. I want to encourage you to take on this movement by the horn and show the way. So I'm going to touch on these 5 areas. I hope that you will find it meaningful and perhaps challenged at the end of this talk to do something, not just about your career as an architect, but more importantly, how to change the world. Now, I'd like to start off with a little bit of historical perspective. Now, we all know that architects, I'm going to stand further back here with this screen in front of me. Now, we all know that architects go through 5 years education, right? I think this is something that is a requirement. So, what do we do in those 5 years? Typically, we learn to design buildings from small little house all the way to something bigger. Now, in the process, unfortunately, we don't learn everything. We all complain that 5 years is a long time, but actually, there's so much to be learned. All of you are architects, right? Or students. Oh, okay, in case you're students, let me assure you that 5 years is actually a very short time. and we can't learn everything. So we learn to design first and foremost. And of course, there are a lot of other lessons to be learned. But I have observed that two areas in particular that we are not really trained in depth. One is working with our fellow professionals, the engineers, or what we call the multidiscipline aspect of building design. And the other aspect, we often leave it to the final year, which is really about designing in the urban context. Yes, we do have some context, always, the emphasis is always there. Yet, we do not really deal with very complex context until almost the final year. So, where are architects really educate in the area of sustainability? Now, our students are often required to produce so-called green architecture, and with more emphasis on technology, our students are often torn between the freedom in design expression and conformance to formulaic approach to sustainability. So, on the one hand, we have to show off our creativity by creating the most outrageous design in terms of forms and space. But yet at the same time, we have to fulfill so-called quote and unquote engineering requirements of what a green architecture should be. So the end result is that at the end of 5 years of graduation, even I observe in all my practice, there are two schools of graduates that emerge. One that continue to believe that, or rather, one that is culturally and politically inspired, always wanting to break new grounds in terms of form and space and shape. Very good. And we do have those who feel that this is such a challenge. I remember I was a student in school of architecture going through 5 years. In year one, they say my design is not wow enough. So in year two, I go wow, and my tutor say it lacks discipline. In year three, I tried to go wow again, and then they said, it lacked depth in understanding the fundamentals. So we kind of graduate sometimes with this schizophrenic mentality to say, on one hand, we have to be highly creative. On the other hand, we have to be highly disciplined. What a struggle, right? Now, we do have two types of graduates in the process. And in life, I have been a boss of firms as well. I can see two kinds of architects emerging. And I would say both are valid. We should not look down on either one. We need both. So there are values, there are benefits in being highly creative, highly wow. There are also values in being very disciplined and being very strict in approaches to design. So this is now, where are the architects, or rather, where were the architects in all this drive for sustainability? I have a lot of good engineering friends who, of course, during these past 5 to 10 years where the world is looking or screaming out for sustainable solutions, and they try to find answers. And in fact, my engineering friends, particularly in the mechanical and electrical field, see a chance, an opportunity to get a second win or get a second opportunity to rise to the occasion. And there you have many M&E engineers who actually become green consultants, become certifiers, and also become great advocates for sustainable architecture. But somehow, some of our architects gone missing. So, where are they now, today? And it doesn't help too when the market is fascinated with rating tools, certifications. Now, I'm the chair for World Green Building Council. Day in, day out, in my interaction with members, we have to deal with this thing. Now, I always tell people that look at this as a tool. Look at this as a midwife delivering a baby. It is not the baby itself. It is a necessary tool for us to know where our buildings stand in terms of performance, but it's by no means the end result of what we're trying to deliver. So it is good, And different countries, different rating tools have different standards depending on the social, economic, environmental context. And in Malaysia, I do notice that you have your great rating tool, GBCI. It's doing a great job. Continue the good work. I think we need that. But don't forget that it doesn't address everything about good architecture. So we need to continue to refine it, perfect it. But most importantly, go back to where we start off in design. Because if we don't do that, if we don't get deeply involved with the whole process of certifying green building, get the whole process of designing good green architecture, very soon architects' work is reduced to just packaging buildings. Why? Because developers oftentimes have very clear idea of the kind of buildings, the planning they want for housing, for offices, so they almost dictated the whole layout. Well, they don't draw it, but they tell you, right? On the other hand, we have engineers who come in to do great work in creating good, efficient building that are highly savings in terms of energy and also in terms of other sustainable features like renewables. So what do architects do in the end? Sad to say, sometimes we ended up drawing very nice facades and try to detail it to perfection. But that's not the full scope of what architecture or good architecture or sustainable architecture is about. So we need to change. So as I mentioned earlier on, in this whole green building movement that I witnessed in the last 5 to 10 years, the middle part of the pyramid are full of other professionals from the building industry. We have people who are, like I said, the engineers are really pushing the frontier in this area. And we have also sociologists. We also have people in the NGOs pushing for rethinking in terms of user behavior. We also have financial institutions that are working closely with us to try to change the market behavior, to try to do market transformation through financing, green leasing, etc. So the architects, some of us are doing great job. There are some of us who are at the pinnacle, driving new thinking in architecture, but a lot of the rest are at the fringe, doing basic compliance of what a green building requires, or simply packaging building nicely and have little say about sustainability. So my message, key message to you today is that there is a need for architects to be involved in sustainability movement. This is the urgent need of today's world. So if you cannot remember everything else I said, please remember this. You, as architects, need to go quickly back into this movement and influence the way the sustainability movement is going. So the answer to this question, can architects play a role, is yes. Now, the architects, fortunately, in my interaction in the last 2 years, as chair as well as being vice chair before that, dealing with a lot of Green Building Council, I have seen increasing involvement. So for example, right now, I understand that in MGBC, you have something like 6 architects out of 16 board members. Singapore Green Building Council, we see increased involvement of the architects. We have 5 out of 20 board members. Right now, myself chair and my vice chair are both architects for World Green Building Council. Hong Kong, your secretary for environment is an architect, a wonderful friend of ours who continue to spearhead the transformation of Hong Kong into a greener city. So I have also, in recent months, spoken to many council and chamber of architects. I can see the increased desire and increased passion for greener buildings and greener architecture. And they are all asking not how to do it, because they know how to do it, but the question is, why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we doing more of it? So I'm going to suggest 5 things which you all know. I think this morning's speakers have given very good ideas about this. Can architects play a role? Let's look at just quickly 5 things, because you are all into this and you know how to do it. But I want to just stretch your mind a little bit on a few of these things. Now, firstly, return to fundamentals. Allow me to put this here. We need to go back to fundamentals of good architecture. And in fact, good fundamentals embodies all the sustainable thinking we have. Architect, we gave a very good illustration about going back to craftsmanship, going back to understanding of material use, the type of material, the quantity of material, how to increase productivity without wastage. Now, this is actually a very nice project that won Asia Pacific Network for World Green Building Council Awards in 2014, I think. It's called T Miru Miru. It's a New Zealand project for a child training facility. Now, of course, at one glance at it, it's nothing like a huge, tall building, nor is it a fanciful architecture. But it won the top awards. For what? For achieving nearly net zero energy because of its extensive use of daylight, that it almost doesn't require much of energy to run this place during the daytime. And it also has its own renewable energy. But most fascinating thing for me is that the architect explained to me that they draw upon inspiration from the native culture to design this thing by using earth as a basic material to keep the adverse climate out. So there you can see that it combines passive architecture, it combines understanding of engineering, and most of all, understanding of its cultural background and inspiration. Secondly, return to contextual architecture. I was in COP22 in Marrakesh. I attended COP21, great event, all right? Great signing ceremony, great alliances built in that event in Paris, one of my favorite cities. But I went to COP22 in Marrakesh not expecting much, because those of you who know where it is in Morocco, compared with Paris, it's really a world apart. But yet, it really inspired me. It almost made me cry, because instead of talking just about policies, about governments, about NGOs, there was an underlying theme about understanding the context, understanding the material, understanding the earth that we live on and how we use it. So even the Secretary General talks about her design for a mud house in that context, and learning to live in an environment that deals with a very harsh climate. And we were given a tour of the new training facilities to retrain people how to use mud from the ground to build wonderful houses and wonderful resorts. And there are challenges, no doubt, because when the architects submitted the plans to their building construction control department, the funny thing is that they don't know how to evaluate. There are no calculations for mud building. And they have to, even the government department has to relearn how to manage such a return to fundamental and return to contextual architecture. So this is a good trend that's changed. Thirdly, solve social problems. Architects are supposed to be very good at solving social problems. And this is, of course, a housing project, public housing project in Singapore. Not easy, very low cost, but yet very livable. I think that's where architects really are good at, and you can do that too, in solving social problems and reduce the burden of today's living. Architects can also help to create innovative economic solutions, such as urban farming. And this is actually a project by Nafo and Kilmore at the Milan World Expo, where they invented a vertical agriculture with motorized harvesting and motorized maintenance. Very innovative. Of course, this project has been shown many times all over the world, and they are doing a similar project in China, from my understanding, is that the idea is this building, through its vegetation, can reduce pollution and also increase oxygen supply. So to do this, you need to have some basic understanding on building sciences as architects, because your M&E engineer, your structure engineer cannot help you with that, and you have to know that knowledge. By the way, just share with you this little sidetrack story. I went to see this building. It's really beautiful. It's full of greenery, and I love it. But I was told that all the plants that you see outside this building, they don't belong to the residents. They belong to a common management, or what we here known as MCST, Management Corporation. So in other words, having spent 3 million euro buying a wonderful apartment in one of these windows that you see up here, from day one when you move in, after you get a certificate of fitness, the tree is maybe this tall. So after 3 years, the tree is probably 3 meters tall and 5 meters wide, and right in front of your living room. And there's nothing you can do about it. You're not supposed to even trim one leaf off, okay? That's the price to pay. But we Singaporeans and Malaysians will just cut the leaves up. Now I want to, of course, those are very quick glance about what architects can do, and I'm sure you all know. And you have no problem, I'm sure, to get back to the fundamentals, do all the things I mentioned. But I want to leave you with one very important aspect that architects have somehow stopped venturing into today, and that's about sustainable urbanism. All of you are familiar with this wonderful picture of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow. We used to talk a lot about utopian model. We used to talk about grandiose plans for cities back in 1940s. Maybe even earlier, Garden City in the 1890s. Most of us are not born, or not at all. And this idea of creating new vision for human settlement has a lot to do with, of course, Industrial Revolution, has got a lot to do with the two world wars, and there is a kind of heroic feeling that we all must contribute to this world and start to set a new vision, set a new goal. That was them. But this feeling somehow grind to a halt. And this is probably last of its kind. You're familiar? Architect Wee this morning said, does anyone still know who Frank Lloyd Wright is? Wow, time is... Okay, it's all right, 10 minutes is fine. So this is metabolist movement, largely by the Japanese. And since then, nobody talks about this anymore. Nobody talks about utopian model. Nobody talks about, certainly from the architecture community, there is a kind of resistance to want to go into the area because maybe they are ashamed that their ideas did not get adopted. Maybe they are afraid that this is too idealistic, just not practical. And they kind of shrink back from stating their views about what urbanism or good urbanism is about. And I think that is missing a very, very important contribution for the architects. So what will happen? What happened is that where Corbusier left off, cities take over the ideas, not in its totality, but only in part. They pick the part they like that makes the most money, which is high-rise, high-density, number one, because we all like to maximize the land, we all like to have more apartments built on a per-acre land, or more offices. The second thing that we like, not that we really like, but we fell in love with, is that thing with four wheels, because Corbusier loved automobiles, in case you don't know that. Well, yes, we must have public transportation, yet the roads become a norm for cities. It's good that we have that modern invention called cars. But if you don't invest in public transportation, this thing is going to kill your city. So I was in Bangladesh just about in April this year, a city of 20 million people. Have any one of you been there? Dhaka? Okay, yes. Lovely city, lots of energy, lots of drive, very vibrant, but very congested. How do I know it's congested? On most roads that I travel on, 6-lane road, 3-lane, or 8-lane road, I sit in a taxi on the extreme right, fastest lane, traveling at a speed of 5 kilometers per hour. And surprise, surprise to me, on my right, there's something else that moves faster than me, which is the trolley and the push carts. So that is how congested cities have become, and we have a part to play. So there is such a celebration of cities. In the last 10 years, with star cities like London, New York, we all see the nice part of it, but we don't see the problem. But there are fundamental flaws like this. And who should rethink it? Do we leave it to policymakers? Do we leave it to government officials? No. Learned professionals like you need to be brave to come forward with new ideas. So I challenge you to give Corbusier a run of his money by daring to coming up with a City of Tomorrow 2, version 2. I did my part, okay? I tried to ask fundamental questions. What city should be? Should it be more GDP, more plot ratio, more buildings per acre, or should it be the fundamental bread and butter issues? It's about housing, it's about job opportunities, education, food supply, and protection of our natural system. As part of this journey, my wife and I co-wrote a book called Cities of Love, basically to examine what are the attributes that cause people to love their cities. That includes government, people sector, private sector. What will motivate them to rethink the paradigm of cities? And we came up with 12 attributes that are not your common terminology for planning norms. These are things about more human factors. So just to give you a quick example, family-oriented city. I think I spoke about this at the last conference here, where we were still preparing the book. Families is such a nucleus of our society, but why isn't it given the priority in terms of planning? Why do we keep creating zone cities where families get torn apart, the children study somewhere else, the two parents work in opposite directions, and everybody have to travel 50 kilometers to where they are for the day and only come back to be so tired and go to bed or watch TV. So happy to share more with you. We have some books here for sale. You can approach us after this. But we take the idea further to say, can we create self-sufficient community, self-sufficient block to begin with that fundamentally addresses all the needs we have within a very short distance where you don't have to travel far. So just a quick simulation. Let's think about a mixed use where you could have job opportunities, you have innovations, you have agriculture, you have Sohos, you have energy creation, you have housing, all within one block. Is it possible? Now, I'm not creating something brand new. If you go back to look at the Barcelona city plan, already some of these ideas were embodied there. Stretch it further, take the precinct out, and within 300 meters diameter, you can have everything that you need in life. So what does it mean? It saves you traveling time, right? Getting stuck in traffic jam is not fun. Stretch it further, we can create district, but as you can see, every module has a green and natural space as its center focus. And we need to rethink paradigm. We need to rethink how to house people in a very efficient way and stop promoting paradigms that actually cause us to expend more energy and time. Someone told me in India that energy loss, you can recover, but time loss, no way. And this is, I think, the crux of it. So we can create small city for 500,000 people and always embodying a central park in the space. This, for example, is Regent Park in London. I spent a lot of time going there. And you can adapt to geographical features. And I also visited Zagreb recently in Croatia. Amazing place. Those of you who have some spare cash for holiday, go there. All right? I'm not from Zagreb Tourism Board, but it is really a beautiful, clean place to go to. And I saw the possibility of extending the same idea perhaps to a nation state like Singapore. So I just did a quick calculation. If I could put my module in, I can house 10 million people with lots of natural space to spare. Now, I'm daydreaming. I'm a dreamer. I'm an architect, right? But I like to dream such dream because it shows me what is possible if only we have started it right. But it's too late to just go and tear down buildings and redo this. I'm just doing this as an exercise to prove a point. Of course, more familiar to you, Penang. I know Penang is doing reclamation, it's trying to increase its vibrancy, its population, etc. But there is always a tension between building more and destroying something in the process. So perhaps we can do that. I know that my architects friends are very, very frank critics of mine, are very honest with me. They say, I don't like your utopian thinking. I don't like your very boxy systematic. Why can't you curve it somewhere? Why can't you create more interesting shapes in the process? I tell them two things. Firstly, this is not an architecture design. This is a systemic thinking or rethinking. Secondly, I want to provoke you to start your own thinking process. I want to provoke you to examine why do you even design things the way you design. This beautiful kampong is what we always dream of living in. Lots of greenery, people are friendly, interaction is great, job opportunity is there, food is plenty, laksa is always there. So I believe that, oh no, we're not going back to create kampongs, all right? Let's be real. We've got to deal with millions of people. But can we be inspired by something like this and create our new paradigm? Instead of always copying an outdated medieval model from somewhere else and then adopt it to our modern day society. I gave this interview, I think it was in Hong Kong, and I said KL has its own route towards sustainability, but you have to find it. So with that presentation, I conclude, and thank you very much, and I hope you continue to do good work. Thank you.